Sharing. Beautiful. Okay. Hello, Danielle here, and we are here for episode 10 of The Man's Mind. This is our final and last interview, and I have Tyran Mowbray. Is that how I pronounce it?
Mowbray.
Mowbray. I'm like, oh, why am I'm so challenged when it comes to names. Who is Australian's leading masculinity mentor, and he specializes in a lot of sexuality and relationship coaching. I have been following him for quite a while, and I am super excited for this interview because I know it's going to trigger the absolute shit out of some people, and it will be raw, real, and authentic. So thank you, Tyran, for visiting us tonight.
My pleasure. Thanks for the good introduction. And yeah, I mean, let's try not to trigger too many people, but it's gonna happen. You put a lot of pressure on me, Danielle.
I think you do that for yourself. Some of the comments that you put just in the headline, I'm like, wow, he went there. All right. So before I tag and post and share this around on Facebook, I'll get you sharing a little bit about what it is, specifically the reason that you started working with men and sexuality and the masculine energy in your own finding your purpose.
Cool. Yeah, look, when I first started, I didn't even know men's work existed. I didn't even know men's work was a thing. I started my journey. I had a breakdown. I realized I hated the man that I was and the man that I was projecting out into the world. And I wanted more fulfillment and I wasn't getting it. And I realized, I knew that it was because I wasn't opening up to my friends. I wasn't opening up to the men in my life. So of course they weren't going to show up the way that I wanted, So my journey and the biggest thing that I had insecurities around, I'd always earned money, I'd always had a home, I'd always done okay, was sex. It was I was addicted to porn. I was jerking off. I wanted to have sex with as many women as I could, and all the time. And my sex drive governed everything that I did. It governed where I went out when I was drinking. It governed when I went out drinking. It governed how much I drank. Yeah, my desire for sex and intimacy was the thing that drove so much of my action in the world. And I knew this, but it wasn't until the cookie crumbled and everything dropped for me that I was like, fuck, this is something I really need to look at. And it got to the point where I was jerking off from porn 4 times a day, working out in the mines. And I couldn't get an erection without a woman or pornography. And it was if I didn't have one of those 2 things, I couldn't get hard on my own. And I was 27. And I was like, this is not okay. Really, I should be at the prime of my life. I know we're very virile at 21 and 22, but, you don't really know how to have sex at that age. You're still learning. So by the time I was 27, it's cool. I've learned a lot. And I'm just, what the fuck is wrong with me? So that's what triggered me into tantra and learning how to prolong my orgasm and prolong my ejaculation. And that led into a lot of heart opening and emotional processing. And then that led into a lot of identity stuff, who the fuck am I and what am I here for? And my entire reality has been broken apart. And now I don't know what's real and what's not. And then from the ashes, something else was created. And I started doing yoga and stuff, and I started teaching men only classes because I wanted a space for men, and I didn't know men's work existed. And then after that, then sexuality kind of kept poking at me, and I knew that it was a big part of my life, and I knew it was a big part of who I am naturally. So then I started talking about my journey with porn and my journey with erectile dysfunction, and all of a sudden men just started listening a lot and reaching out to me. And so that was when the Shameless Sex God was born. And then we transferred from there to a bit of a deeper, it started off with sex, and now there's a lot of other stuff that comes through with that. Sex is the surface. So sex is the gateway into all the other stuff beneath.
Yeah. And so when you started to really work on that part of yourself, was that a lot of self-intimacy and I guess self-pleasure to sort of connect into your body, feel energy? Because I know a lot of men and the way we've sort of been programmed, or how everyone's sort of so disassociated from feeling in their body? Was it reconnecting a lot with your body and actually getting the energy to come in from that more intimate, vulnerable space?
Yeah, I mean, yes. And basically, I went celibate, right? Like I forced myself to go celibate because I knew that everything was dictated and governed by my relationship with women. So I was like, all right. And I was traveling Europe. Like I bought a one-way ticket to Europe and I was like, fuck this. I'm going to learn about myself. And, you know, all of my mates were like, dude, you got to fucking do videos and make a blog. Like, you know, because I lived a crazy life in Australia. So they were like, dude, you'll be fucking famous. Like, you've got to do that. And I was like, oh, yeah. No, like, and so I went as a 27-year-old fit, athletic Australian backpacker to Europe, where really I would have been able to fuck as many backpackers as I wanted. I went celibate and fucking lived on mountains and in my tent and hitchhiked across countries. And I did everything that my friends had no fucking idea about me with, because I didn't tell them that there was any of this going on for me. So I went celibate, and that celibacy forced me to go inwards, and I did it on purpose. The problem with that was I still didn't talk to anyone about it. Like I read tantric books, I watched a couple little fucking videos and stuff, and that was it. I was still so shamed around my own sexual energy that I did not ask for support. I never got any help or guidance or governance from any women or other dudes that had been down the path. I didn't know any. And so I stumbled and I failed and I made heaps of mistakes again and again and again. And I went down shame spirals, all because I wouldn't ask for help. But yeah, it was very much about, okay, if I'm not trying to get my sexual, intimate, physical needs met by a woman, then how do I feel happy? How do I feel fulfilled? And a lot of that comes back to self-pleasure of the body, self-pleasure of and I learned to reconnect with all of me, like my toes, my fingers, my hands, my elbows, my armpits, my chest, my, like everything, you know, my legs, and yes, my dick and my balls, but on a whole new level.
It's really beautiful hearing that, because I think the main thing that has stuck out for me throughout that, and what were originally called, was shameless sex god, is the amount of shame that's actually connected to these topics, and why they're not talked about, and why it's not normalized, and why it's I guess a part of that isolation journey of being a man or a woman, but mostly in men's work, you find men going on this self-discovery journey on their own. And why I've created this whole session and podcast series is to start normalizing and teaching and sharing and building community in that way. Do you find that with the guys that you're working with, when it comes to their sexuality, the main I guess block is to do with shame?
Shame and guilt, definitely. You know, shame and guilt, and fear's in there a little bit. It's shame of their desires, right? So for me, shame is a feeling of, I feel bad about who I am. Like shame is that, like, my identity, or the things that I have inside of me inherently, I feel shameful about. Guilt is like, I have done something that I feel shameful about, or, you know, and therefore there's guilt. So for me, like, that's the kind of difference of the correlation. And fear, for me, like, fear is pretty linked to shame in it, in the sense of, like, I have this desire. It may not be shameful yet, but I'm afraid that if someone finds out, then I will be deemed wrong, bad, fucking whatever. So shame, guilt, and fear are pretty much the three big ones. And holding a point of shamelessness in any sexual expression is really hard, because we have our own criticisms and judgments on what is okay and what is not okay, and what is good and what is bad, and what is right and what is wrong. And I'm not trying to say that all sexual expression should be allowed. You know, there are definitely aspects of the very violent and nasty aspects of sexual, you know, force or coercion that is really bad. But you can still tap into that energy and play it out in a way that is safe and not harming anyone. or find people that are consenting to a very similar experience and have something that feels like a similar, vibration to it. But the moment we adamantly shut down something and say it's fucking bad or wrong or disgusting, shame, guilt, and fear will all creep into someone's system. And this is not about sex anymore. This is any gender. And then you've got to go through the journey of like, okay, then you've got to love the part that feels shamed and then let it out. And it's a real big journey. So yeah.
Yeah, I definitely resonate to the way you explain shame, guilt. It's like when you have shame, it's I'm a bad person, and you have so much contracted energy that when you when you go into that feeling, the only other sort of lower level is like death, right? So it's like it's such a terrifying feeling, and then you want to keep distracting yourself from even going there. And I think that's where we spoke to a porn addiction specialist actually last week. So the cycle's created where you feel the shame, and then to get that high and the chemical reaction in the brain, you're still cycling through that. And there's not a realization of, I think, the level of how normal it is to have these I guess thoughts or kinks or ideas, and because we're so fearful of sharing them, then there's so much built up shame. What are some of the main, I guess, topics or areas that you find people have a lot of blockages and shame around when it comes to their sexuality?
Oh, look, that's a really broad question. I don't know if we have enough time for all of that. But definitely, like, I guess just a small piece from what you said around the porn addiction specialist. It's like, if whatever the kink or quirk is, if I've been shamed for something, whether it was at high school, whether it was by my parents, whether it was whatever, anything that liberates that shame a little bit, I'm going to enjoy a lot, because it alleviates that shame. And that's why men are so addicted to porn, right? It's because their sexuality has been shamed. They're told they're bad or negative or dirty or whatever. And so in porn, they find people that have the same kinks as them. And so they get an elevated sensation of, oh my God, I'm not weird. And that's why they become dependent on that, because that's their only source of liberation. And that's where I feel like we find a lot of men addicted to these things. It's because that's the liberation, that's the openness, that's the happiness for them. And they spend too much time there and they become addicted to that instead of, learning how to open up in other areas. But I find that definitely probably the biggest thing that I'll name the top three that I've found with men, at least. That is wanting to have multiple partners or at least experiences with multiple people. The second one is anal play, right? Like, and that doesn't even mean whether it's them like receiving or giving, either or, like men have shame around asking for it to give it, asking for it to give it, to get it, both. And the third one is power play, right? Like whatever the power, like using power dynamics because if they want to be dominant, they're told that that's not okay, that that it's not safe and blah blah blah. So yeah, using power play in a sexual interaction, is probably the third thing that they have the most shame or fear around.
Yeah, I can definitely see why those would be some of the top three. And I mean, ultimately, instantly what I feel is that that's a lot around social conditioning and what's wrong and right behavior in relationships. But then I guess there's a level of childhood trauma that would come up that play into those belief systems with a lot of your clients. Do you find that you're working with men? Does their sort of childhood experience play out a lot when you're moving through for them to find more intimacy with themselves?
Yeah. There's always stuff in there. So I don't really do a lot of inner child stuff. We do some occasionally. It really depends on what's active. But what I do is I get them to track where the belief came from, or where the story came from, or where the shame came from. So identifying where it came from for me, rather that, like a lot of people do, why do you have it? And I'm like, why is not the right question for me. Where it came from. It came from my parents. Okay, well, where did theirs come from? Came from their parents. Okay, well, where did theirs come from? What came from religious dogma? Okay, well, where did the religious dogma? So asking where, for me, kind of it allows you to see the history of beliefs or the history of dogma around sexuality, desires, shame, whatever. And usually it's like, oh, I no longer have to hate women, or I no longer have to hate my parents, or I no longer have to hate the kids from school, because I can see that like what they told me was bad was actually just what they were told was bad. And now it's no longer a personal thing. It's no longer like I don't have to feel bad. Like I got told, an ex-girlfriend of mine told me that I was a dirty man because I wanted this desire or whatever. And it's just like, well, I now hate women, or I now hate her, but really I don't, because now when I say, where did that come from? Well, it came from her. Okay, well, where did her desire come from? Where did her idea come from? And so it takes the personal out of it. So we can do that without having to go into deep inner child stuff, because sometimes you don't have the space or time to do that work. But otherwise, yeah, you can work with the inner child for sure.
Beautiful. So on that, going back to the intimacy piece, I know that recently I saw a post and you were talking about, and I see this with a lot of the clients that I work with, men seem to think that intimacy is sex. Now, I know in your post you shared that intimacy can create amazing sex and connection. I want to know from your perspective what intimacy is and how it is involved in the work that you do.
Well, it comes back to self-pleasure, right? Like every program that I run, the first few weeks or practices is all around self-pleasure. You know, like I think everyone needs to self-pleasure more, not less. Like I do at least 20 minutes a day, twice a day as a minimum. You know, that's my practice. And some people will say it's too much, but that's what but I don't ejaculate anymore. I used to ejaculate 3-4 times a day. Now I don't ejaculate every time. I choose when I do that. And when you understand yourself intimately, like what intimacy means is with depth, right? Like with depth and with an acute understanding of the subtleties that exist within whatever we're talking about. So if I understand myself intimately, I understand all the subtleties that happen when things are done to me physically, emotionally, mentally. I understand how my body responds when it's pinched, when it's scratched, when it's slapped, when it's pressed lightly. I know which areas of my body respond to certain types of touch. I know what happens intimately inside of my emotional body when someone triggers my inner child wounds, or my mummy wounds, or my daddy wounds, or my abandonment wounds, or whatever. I know myself intimately. And when I know myself intimately, I know that I can communicate what's happening to anyone that I'm with, which then allows them to know me intimately. But I need to know myself intimately first. And the more I know myself intimately, the less shame or guilt or fear I'm going to hold around any expression that I have. So therefore, the less shame, guilt, or fear I'm going to project onto anyone else and any expression that they have. And so I can ask the right questions. I can inquire into what's happening for a woman or a lover, regardless of gender, even or just a male friend, because I can see in them something that's happening, and I know that it's not kosher because I've had that experience myself. And so I can know them intimately now. And when that intimacy is created, firstly, it's going to be really scary. If you've never had that before, it's going to be really scary, because intimacy, into me I see, is literally what it fucking says, as you say it. And some people have never been seen that much, and so it can be really scary. And some people will move away from you when they know that you can see that deep, like it's going to happen. But the people that don't move away, the love making, and even just the love that is potential, like the love that has potential there, even just as friends, but also the love making between people that are intimate, is beyond anything that you can get from a quick fuck off Tinder or down the bar on a Saturday night.
Yeah, 100%. That, like in my own experience, it's like a continual deepening into more and more surrender, into intimacy and vulnerability, and my friendships. And I think just by allowing that within yourself too, when you get to a space being comfortable enough in that within yourself, it opens your heart space, and the person that you're with, then it also invites them to choose that. And as you've said, like, there'll be people that find that way too uncomfortable and they'll just shut down and won't communicate with you. But the level of, I guess, sexual union when it comes from a female perspective, and the men that I know that have been able to hold presence and sovereignty and allow themselves to be in that space without all of the stuff, it gives me, even though it's not a spoken thing, I can feel it and I can surrender and open more. And I know that you've talked a lot about, to have that level of union and sexual connection, it's about the woman feeling safe enough to open. Are there sort of specifics that you help men to see in being this space for their woman?
Well, yeah, I mean, I teach them how to do it for themselves, and I teach them how to communicate what's happening for themselves. And we work the muscle of that. Like, okay, have the experience. Now tell me what happened in the experience. And don't just tell me, tell the 20 men that are in this group. And then have those men reflect to you what they see, and then have them share their experiences. And so it's a rapid acceleration of liberation, because it's no longer me and him creating safety. It's me and 20 other men creating safety. And so when 20 men are together sharing something, it's like, fuck, I'm not the only one. Oh my God, I'm learning from you. And you, oh my God, I have the same experience as you. Holy shit, I've never had that experience, but I can see how that does this thing now. And so the acceleration amplifies. Now, when they have questions, absolutely, I answer the questions. I give them feedback on whatever it is coming up for them. And, hey man, I'm having this trouble with my girlfriend around this thing and that thing. And they send me messages and I respond to the best of my capabilities. And I share as openly as I can from my own experience, yeah. And for me, there is an energetic dynamic that plays out between all humans. And so understanding that energetic dynamic is what helps build the foundation on all your experiences from then on out.
When you talk about the energetic dynamic, are you talking about polarity between masculine and feminine energy and the sort of battery effect?
Yes, but I go a layer deeper with the mystery school that I study that in New Zealand. And my teachers like Bruce Lyon and Janine McDonald and a few others, they take masculine and feminine another layer. So rather than just masculine and feminine, because masculine is meant to be compassionate and caring and heart-centered and hold space, but he's also meant to be assertive and strong and dominant. So it's just like, how the fuck do they fit in the same category as of masculine energy, right? And feminine is meant to be caring and nourishing and loving and compassionate and seductive and manipulative and sexual. And it's like, what the fuck, So we break masculine and feminine down into dark and light aspects. And light is not good and dark is not bad. Light is consciousness or spirit, and dark is embodiment or matter. And both of them have shadow aspects. So you've got, rather than just masculine and just feminine, you've got light mask, light femme, dark mask, dark femme. And so this kind of allows another layer of interaction, because how many times have we seen the good girl attracted to the bad boy, and how many times have we seen the Mr. Nice Guy attracted to the fucking crazy emotional fucking stripper? So, it's like they're the archetypes that play out quite frequently, because those polarities are creating wholeness, right? Like polarity, we have polarity to experience the full spectrum. So, men are attracted to women because women represent feminine energy, which they've suppressed their whole life, and women are attracted to men because they are supposed to represent the masculine energy they've suppressed their whole life. But when you go and follow gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual relationships, energetically still tends to be very similar, right? Like in a gay couple, there's a top and there's a bottom, and I've worked with a lot of gay men, and there's still a lot of the same dynamics in those relationships that play out in a male-female relationship. And sometimes we see big, strong, masculine business women with the stay-at-home dad. And it's like, well, energetically, there is still this polarity that's playing out. And it doesn't always have to be that she's in her masculine, he's in her feminine. It can also be different variations of it. So that's, for me, the energetic undercurrent that plays out between every human interaction on the planet. But let's not get into that anymore, because that's a whole webinar in itself.
I was gonna say that's like a huge topic, and it's one I love, but I'll bypass it. Now I'm like, my mind's on that. What are some of the biggest personal challenges with your, I guess, along this journey within your own sexuality and relationships that I guess have been such big lessons and transformation for you with your work?
Well, we tend to teach the things that we need to work on the most. So me calling myself the shameless sex god for a little while, that brought up all my shame around sex and sexuality, right? Becoming a tantric, let's say, sex coach for a little while, and not being in a committed relationship tends to bring up all of the, you're now just a fucking tantric spiritual fuckboy that just is uncommitted and blah, blah, blah. And I still get it every now and again. Actually, I posted something on my stories where a woman just sent me a private message saying that. So part of what I've probably really had to deal with is the part of me that does like to have multiple sexual partners, that is trying to do it as consciously and openly and honestly as he can. The part of me that really does desire a deeply committed, deeply loving, expansive relationship with someone that is inclusive of all the aspects of myself. And at the same time, like, I tried open relate. I still open relate, and I've tried open relating with a few people. When the very first woman that I tried it with left me for the first man she slept with, and my last one, we were just fucking traumatizing each other for 9 months, and it took me 18 months to heal that piece and to finally disconnect from her, just to be able to function, you know. And so some of the biggest challenges I've had is like having the desire to be open and overcome my insecurities around other men being better lovers, better this, better that, better whatever, you know, and honoring the part of me that desires to explore open relating still, and be ridiculously fucking heartbroken and hurt on that journey, and try to trust myself that that's still the truth for me, even though I've been hurt in that and somewhat traumatized by some of my experiences, and still showing up every day for love in that regard, you know, like that's. But beyond any premature ejaculation or porn addiction, like that's probably the fucking hardest and most shameful thing. Like when I'm this big, strong masculinity mentor that's grounded and blah, 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 and I'm a fucking ball of mess on the floor crying because I'm heartbroken and I don't think anyone's going to love me and I can't do this anymore. And, you know, and to ask for help in those moments, that's the most humbling experience I've ever had, you know. And I guess I just want to wrap that up by just saying, like, I don't open relate because I want to fuck lots of women. That's a big misconception of at least why I do it. I want to open relate because to witness the woman that I love, or any woman that I love, connect with another man, and for me to feel love and an expansiveness for her and for him in that moment, and not run my own abandonment, jealousy, insecurity. That is a place of self-empowerment that is unfuckwithable. And that's because that's my biggest fear personally. And that's why I open relate. Like, it's got nothing to do with like the benefit of it. Yes, I also get to have multiple partners, but I can guarantee you that if I'm emotionally hurt, the last thing I want to do is have sex with anyone. And so like, that's my desire. My deepest desire for myself is to be so in love with myself in a positive way that can happen, and I'm not jealous or scared or insecure.
Yeah. And that takes a lot of inner work to do, like a lot of stripping back layers and looking at yourself and coming from the heart. And it's actually been something I've been personally journeying with myself. So when you're saying it, I'm like, oh God, wow. Of that space of, I guess when you want to have a committed relationship and you love someone so deeply, what I see in my own personal piece on that is that if I love someone truly unconditionally, I want them to be able to be all of them in every single moment. And that means letting them explore whatever energy comes from their heart at that time. And I don't want to create any shame or guilt or have someone cut off their energy or their parts of themselves to fit an idea of what a committed relationship is either. And I want the people that I love to be able to experience all the things, right? So like, to me, that's what like true love is. It's like, yeah, if you feel that from your heart and you want to express that and experience that, then I honor you for honoring yourself and doing that. And I think it's really challenging too, because you've got that other part that's like, well, I want to own you and don't leave me. And yeah, the abandonment wounds that come up, and moving through those things is really hard. So I really respect your honesty from a male perspective on that, and the real reason as to why you're in that space, and clarifying that. I think it's really beautiful, because a lot of people don't see it. Yeah, they're like, oh, well, you just want to like have a polyamorous relationship and like have sex with everyone. It's like, no, you're not even, you just so don't get it.
One relationship is hard enough. Imagine having three. Like, that's a lot of fucking effort. So I mean, it's not all fun and games and orgies, you know, it's really not.
Yeah. And I mean, this is, I guess, leads into one of the next questions, is that level of intimacy and depth that you have to build one truly conscious relationship. It's like you're talking about all your triggers and your patterns, and you're getting to know each other so much that you know how to hold space for a person, because you truly have that curiosity and that depth for them, so that you can really love and support them through it. And that takes so much communicating. It can get exhausting at times. Like, there's been many times that I'm like you and I'm like, I'm done, I don't want to do anymore. Like, I just don't. When it comes to, from your perspective, and being intimate with women, what are some of the biggest, I guess, fears and challenges that come up for women that men aren't aware of?
Say that again. What are some of the biggest challenges for women?
So when it comes to, yeah, so well, from what you've noticed, most men probably aren't aware of these certain areas until maybe you, like, I know there's a lot of things that you to educate.
Yeah, cool. So the first thing most men are probably not aware of is how many women have been sexually assaulted or sexually coerced into doing things that they don't want to do. That's probably the number one thing. That was probably the biggest realization that I had when I started to ask those questions. We're starting to realize how many women have been sexually assaulted in some way, shape, or form. And realizing that the impact of that experience dictates how they show up sexually for the rest of their life and how they perceive men. And so it's actually got nothing to do with you as a person and your fucking small, insecure ego as a man, and everything to do with her potentially traumatizing experience of sexuality. Because most men, it's very interesting. Like, I definitely have crossed women's boundaries in my life. Okay. And still do to some extent, right? Like, we can never get things perfect. And I think you never will. And I don't try to. I try to do the best I can. And I believe that a vast majority of men don't even know that what they did was sexual assault either. You know, I think there are many times when men push their agenda, yes, and they know that they're pushing their agenda, but they believe that if the woman really didn't want to do something, they would say no. And that's not the case when you ask women. women don't feel like that. And I think this is probably the biggest misconception that men have, is that if a woman really doesn't want to do something, she'll say no, but they don't, and they do say yes more frequently than no, because they're afraid of social stigma. They're afraid for their health. They're like their physical well-being. They're afraid of many things. And they don't communicate that. Like, I've never, ever wanted to cross a woman's boundaries ever. And I guarantee you, if she had said no firm enough, I would have stopped. But there were many times, on the couch, on a sleepover or whatever, she's like, no. And you're like, oh, come on, baby, blah, blah, blah. And it's just, it's never, because men don't physically force them, they don't see it as sexual assault. And the woman surrenders and goes, oh, fine, fuck it. Just, and I want to empower women more to stand the fuck up and say no, because I can guarantee you, men may get a little bit shitty, yes, but they don't want to ever assault you. I mean, there are some obviously that do, don't get me wrong, and it's fucking terrible and disgusting. But I do believe that a vast majority of men don't ever want to assault you and don't know how to manage their sexual energies, which is why that they are so needy, because we are starved of intimacy and connection. And so any opportunity we get to receive it, we will try. And it's just a very big disconnection between men and women. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that men are unaware of, is how many women have been sexually assaulted and how many women don't say no when they really want to say no.
Yeah. I would have to agree with that, from my own personal life experience, and then working with men and understanding polarity and seeing the different dynamics, and getting to that point where I've been able to step outside of my own experience and understand the people that have been that and where that's been coming from. And I think what you're saying around that being starved of the intimacy and I guess the creative energy as well. Would you say that that's just because they don't have their own physical intimacy and touch, or the way that we as people are not actually very physical with each other? Or do you think that it's also a lack of creative outlet, that there's that build-up of sexual energy that sort of needs to be dispersed? Is it more about the sexual act, or is it more about the intimacy that those sort of things happen?
Well, I mean, it's kind of both and neither at the same time, right? Like, yeah, right now, obviously, COVID around the world, lockdown, many people can't even touch their friends. Like, you're not even allowed to fucking be one, like, literally, you're not allowed to stand 1.5 meters next to strangers on the streets. Like, what the fuck type of society is creating so much separation between humans? So definitely, in general, we are not affectionate enough as a human race anymore, right? So that's a mass generalization, but I do believe that we are starved of physical intimacy on a just a basic human fundamental need. So yeah, that's one. Two, like, I don't think there's enough acknowledgement of sexual energy in young men and what happens, right? Like, we go from the age of 12, potentially 11, to like, oh, girls have cooties and I don't want to go near them. And then all of a sudden, this fucking life force just like erupts in us, and we just all of a sudden, it's like, I can't stop staring at the teacher's tits and I just want to touch everyone, and fucking all of a sudden I just want to fucking joke off all the time. And it's like this eruption of life force, which signals puberty and masculinity and testosterone, and all of a sudden the chemical enhancements that come through a young boy's body is just fucking mind-blowing, and all he wants to do is fucking penetrate everything in the fucking space. And so you add that to starved intimacy, right? And all of a sudden, and men have been shamed to touch their dicks. Don't touch your willy, it'll fall off. Stop doing that, blah, blah, blah. So all of a sudden, it doesn't fall off, it gets bigger and it feels amazing. And an ejaculation, like, is an orgasm for women, like an orgasm for us, is literally the closest thing to God or enlightenment or fucking divine connection that we are ever going to experience, most of us as humans, because we don't meditate and we don't, do all the other things, that breath work, which can create those same experiences. And so an orgasm it's why we're so addicted to them as a culture, because they're fucking enlightening. That is when we realize our own divinity. And so you add connection to God, like literally the most fucking perfect feeling you can ever have as a human. You mix that with this fucking energy that just wants to fuck everything and no training and no education around it. And you mix that with starved intimacy and not enough physical touch. What do you expect? Like literally, what do you expect? And so that's like, for me, it's kind of all of them combined. And at the same time, I think the big one is just, it's a complete lack of understanding of sexual energy and what happens, because it's if you and I had sex, we can create life. Like that's literally the potency of a man and a woman coming together. We can create life, which is literally the most magic fucking thing that we are capable of. And that is beautiful and sacred, and yet we don't really give it that sacredness. So yeah, that amount of life force and potential is why we love it so much.
And I think the thing that, like, I've spent a bit of time journeying this around, the starved intimacy, and then not understanding sexual energy. And then also when you add in all the shame and guilt and the programming, and my own belief is because that sexual energy and sexual union and connecting in with orgasm as well to source energy, or directly to spirit or God or universe or whatever terminology you want to use. When I hear it, I'm like, that's exactly why our society and our world is the way it is. Because if we actually tapped into the potentials of our body and were able to feel that, we would, it's super healing. Like just that level of union as well. Like sexuality in that purest form heals so much. And I think I just see these stories as a way of keeping so many people asleep, so that they're not experiencing it. Because if you've got shame and guilt, then you don't experience it, which means you're not allowing people to get into their expansiveness and their true authentic energy. And that still frustrates me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
On the intimacy piece too, I find something that stuck out for me around this, and I know for a lot of people, and seeing how much we hold ourselves back. So this, for me, my number one love language is affection. And so I've really been aware that I'm not even affectionate with my friends, because there's so much judgment around what if, and especially being a woman with men, I'm like, oh, I don't want to give off the wrong impression. And then I've got all my own sexual trauma and like the abuse that I've experienced that comes up. And it's like, hang on, that is so, that those beliefs are what's causing so many people not to show up as who they actually are. And we just disconnect and contract and go into shame and guilt and suppression. How do you find showing up in all of yourself in your work? Like, is there certain parts of you that you still find really hard to call forward?
In different circumstances and different situations, yes. I have become better at, like when people say, I want to show all of me and I want to let all of me out. And it's like, well, look, sometimes you don't fucking need to show all of you, like there's the difference. Like when we've lived lives of suppression and the desire is liberation. And then once you've kind of done the liberation thing, you kind of like, well, I mean, I'm not really, you burn through things. So for example, I had a lot of anger, right? I had a lot of anger. And when that anger comes up in me, it's still very ferocious, but it's less frequent. And I don't have it as much, and I don't need to hold on to it as long. So yeah, like for example, in my men's group, like I can channel it when I need to. Like I can if I'm teaching emotional expression and I want to tap into anger, I am very good and masterful at, okay, I'm going to tap into this thing that I know that makes me angry, and express the thing, and showcase to them the practice or the tool or the whatever. And sometimes I still get a bit shaky afterwards and whatnot. But I mean, when you've done the work for a while, you learn to dissolve the self that is kind of holding on to all the stories about all the things. And so showing up as all of you, actually, you are nothing. Like, technically speaking, you are no thing. And so wanting to show up as this and 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 this, and I'm this part and I'm that, it's like, that gets really fucking exhausting. And actually, I'd rather sit in the nothingness most of the time and then feel what the environment needs and then show up as that part of me, because I am everything and I am nothing. So yeah, like and that's still a journey. Like, I'm still practicing that. You know, I'm not Buddha that sits in a nothing state all the fucking time and just has a smile on his face. I still think and process. But I'm going to get off this phone call and I'm not going to remember a single thing that I said, right? Like, my transmission, what I say, when I say it, how I say it, is true in that moment for the thing that we are talking about. And then afterwards, I'm going to be like, that felt like a good call and I probably should have recorded it, but I don't remember what I said, you know, like it's in the moment. And so that's how I try to live more frequently, is in the moment. And that's the practice. It's like constantly, whether it's breath work, whether it's working out, whether it's like, what's my body want? Knowing myself intimately allows me to be intimate with the world in each moment, rather than now I'm this, now I'm that, you know? So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, I have trouble sometimes, but predominantly that's kind of what I do.
So the level of presence that you show up in calls through whatever, I guess, energy is required for each situation. When you because I imagine you're teaching presence and being in the moment with the guys that you work with a lot. You've spoken about breath work. What are and self-intimacy and self-pleasure, which is huge for getting into the body. What are some of the other, I guess, practices that you've worked with to sort of feel those little contractions so that people can be present and be aware of their body?
Yeah, so you know, okay, basic outline of my program is the first month we spend the whole month on sexual energy, right? So I teach them different pleasure practices and different intimacy practices and breath work inside that to sublimate and circulate sexual energy. The second month we go into emotional expression, because, you know, if you can't sit silently with yourself for 20 minutes and like breathe, sound, make noise, love your body, like caress and find love for yourself for that 20 minutes, you've got emotions in the way. There's a story, there's an emotional block of like unworthiness, anger, resentment, grief, sadness, joy, like whatever, there's a block in the way. So then we go into emotional processing, and this can be done in many different ways. It can be done through big physical exertive efforts. It can be done through mental unpacking and frameworking of like, cool, where's my emotions come from? So you can be the observer in your emotions and you can learn to kind of unpack your emotions mentally, not just physically. So yeah, there's a few different practices that I teach in that. Some are physical, some are, yeah, like mentally going into the story and unpacking it and dissolving it. So they're done through like visualizations or meditations, or even just like, you know, having a script of questions that you then, you know, and you request Q&As, so question response or question and answer. And then the third month we come up into the heart, because it's like the energy has to keep moving. And it's like, so once we've kind of alleviated our sexual tension, once we've started to process our emotions a little bit and we understand that, you know, we can move them as we want, then we really get to come up into the heart and learn to like, okay, I'm no longer angry or sad or, you know, grievous around a thing. I'm cultivating strong sexual current and I can move that as I want. What's true in my heart? Like what blocks do I have around my heart and intimacy of the heart? And why do I not let people in? What am I afraid of? How do I open that? And so again, that's done through a series of, there's one visualization, but it's a lot. I'm very into the physical activity of these things. Like, how do I create a cellular imprint, a physical response of what it feels like to have an open heart? So I create rich, and so then like the last month is self-initiation. And so these are rituals that I teach them and to do for themselves to initiate themselves into the man that they want to be. and they can keep doing these as they want, however they want, on their own scale, like bigger, longer, shorter, again and again. And they're still rituals that I use. And so, rituals, once you've managed to move through base level sexual, emotional, and heart blockages, then you can start to see the sacredness in all things. And then you can really start to show up presently. That's when you can really be present. And when you struggle to be present because there's a sexual current, because there's an emotional problem, because you're feeling your heart closed, you've got some tools to process and move through them so you can come back to presence. So that's kind of how we like to work with the men.
Yeah. And I mean, it's beautiful because you talk quite a lot about relationships and interacting with women, and everything that you've shared there is men getting more in touch with themselves and understanding themselves more and their emotions and their energy, and different tools to I guess identifying their own masculine and feminine and move through all of that. Is that where the understanding and the awareness for them comes to showing up in more presence in their relationship, because they find that within themselves and then can mirror that out and actually see that with their woman?
Yeah. So basically, if I'm not in some fucking story as to why I'm not worthy of love, or why I'm a piece of shit, or why I have sexual desires around this thing, or if I'm not in that emotional process, I can be more present with you. When we're intimate, I can hold space, I can touch, I can caress. I'm not trying to finger bang you as quick as I can, or tweak your nipple to get you off because I want to get back to this other thing because because my mind's somewhere else. It's like, when I've found the joy in presence, I can be in and when I'm with you and I'm caressing, it's like, hey, is everything okay? I feel like this, and all of a sudden you, or whoever, like I just use it, you're like, oh my God, I feel really scared at the moment. I'm just like, oh, well, what's the matter? It's just like, fuck, how could you feel that? And it's like, well, because I'm really being present. I'm not in my brain. I'm not in some contraction. I'm not in some, I need to fuck you as quick. That's all gone. And so, yeah, it's like when men have moved through their own blocks and they're no longer in a state of insecurity, abandonment, rejection, ridicule, like whatever, self-shame or guilt or grief, they can just be the love that they are. Like, we are all born as love and we're here to be love. And the expression of that love is going to look different for all of us, but ultimately it's still love. And so that's, anything in the way of that is what we need to vibrate out of the body.
Yeah, definitely. While you were speaking, actually, something that I know you're going to have some insight on dropped down from a conversation recently, and it was around the story that might be there with men when they come too quickly. And one of the theories that I have heard is that there's a lack of safety that is obviously within themselves and with women, that they want to come so that they can get out as quickly as possible. Is that like something that it's like, and I mean, I found that a really interesting, an interesting piece, because I could see how that could actually play a part if it was in the subconscious mind as they're trying to be present and be involved, but because there's that level of not feeling safe. And I know men feel just as unsafe during sexual connections as what women do at times. And I know that you've actually spoken around men's rape before, which is another piece I want to speak to real quickly because it's like time. Has that been something that you've uncovered in any of your work? Or what sorry, or what maybe is a piece as to that kind of like coming too quickly, kind of to help? Because I personally know a lot of guys in my experience that have had this as an issue, not an issue, a block for them, and it's caused a lot of frustration. So is there some light that you can shed to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've never framed it like that. I can see how, I mean, the more a man comes, on a fucking ancient primal level, I mean, it's not even about pleasure, right? It's purely about spreading your seed. Now, it wasn't until we became healthier and like started growing crops and had fucking medical stuff that we started to live longer. Because back in the day, we never lived, you know, it wasn't, we didn't have the, what do you call it? What, like when we have something that you didn't have in the past, the benefit, like we didn't have the benefit of, like, you know, we were travelers. It was like fucking babies would die all the time. You know, you wouldn't have 7 kids because you couldn't have 7 kids because, you know, we were traveling all the time and packing up tents and fucking hunting lions and fucking blah blah blah. So, you know, for me, I don't really, like, I look at it as potentially fear. Like there could be fear of intimacy, like, fuck, I'm being seen and this is thing. And so there could be, you know, but I don't see it as fear of intimacy as much as it's like, it's more just, you know, there's emotion, unprocessed emotion that they can't move. Like that, there's like anxiety for me is emotion in the body that I haven't learned how to process. And so whether it's ADHD, whether it's anxiety, whether it's whatever, like all this is moving in the body and I'm not present and calm enough to just be with my own self and be able to sublimate a move, you know, like think of it as getting a massage and someone just fucking jams their elbow on your back and it's like the whole body contracts and it's like, can you relax and breathe into that? And can you sublimate the pain that is existing in your shoulder or in your back and spread it through your body? So like for me, yeah, I mean, I could see it as fear, but that would be like deeply ingrained fear of like, I've got to come as quickly as I can because, you know, this is not about intimacy or pleasure or sex or whatever. It's like purely animalistic primal part. And there might be a fucking tiger outside. I see it more if these days as a just a, yeah, if there was fear, it would be fear of intimacy, like and fear of connection and shame. Like if it's happened once before, it's going to happen again. I'm going to be ridiculed. I'm going to be fucking told I'm not man enough. I'm going to be told that, you know, I can't do this properly. I can't do that properly. Like I just asked a question on my wall today, like what's the number one thing men do in the bedroom wrong? And none of them said come too fast. Not one woman said come too fast. It was they go too fast. You know, like you push too quickly, you go too fast. But it never had anything to do with the men ejaculating too quickly. And for me, that's the difference. It's like if they slowed the fuck down more, then they would be able to last longer and they would be able to move through. It's like fitness. You're going for a run after a K, you're tired. You push through that wall, fuck, now I can run 5. Then you hit 5 and you push through that wall and then you can go for 20. And it's sex is the same thing. So premature ejaculation is very common. And I think it's very much, you know, look, some guys just need to jerk off before they have sex the first time, and that's fine. And that's okay. If that's what you want to do and that's what you need to do, great. But ultimately, I do believe that it's as simple as, you know, learning to master your energetic body and feel the sensations that are existing, and learning how to move that sensation through the body.
Is that done through edging? I know that I do actually know someone who's done one of your courses, and it was super interesting because we were dating at the time. So it was really interesting for me to be like, oh, this is cool. Like what you're learning. Oh, okay. I can't touch you for a week. All right. And watching the exploration and learning that he went through, and that was the first time I'd ever heard of edging. So is edging something that is a practice to teach to hold on to that, I guess, orgasm and ejaculation?
Yes. Well, you don't hold on to the orgasm. You understand that the orgasm comes before the ejaculation. So reframing in your brain that ejaculation and orgasm are the same thing is really hard for a man to do to start with because he's never probably experienced that. But edging is how you can experience an orgasm and pleasure and fulfillment without having to ejaculate, and learning how to sublimate, which is like how to ejaculate, basically like how to ejaculate inside your own body and circulate that. That is how you don't get blue balls because blue balls is also a real thing. So yeah, that's all of that is all connected. But yeah, edging, sublimation, You know, if you want a book, the microcosmic, the multi-orgasmic man by Mantak Chia is a world-renowned book. I never got through it. It's way too long for me, but I also had already started the journey before I read it. So it was kind of rereading stuff I already knew, but it's a great book for people that you know, want to get started, for men, for sure.
I'm just going to ask one more question on this piece. Ejaculation and orgasm. Now, from the communication that I've had with men, and through my own experience with conscious men that are doing the work and have sort of gotten to an embodied, integrated state, is that they can seem to have this energy where they fuck and ejaculate, but it's really challenging for them to have like the full body orgasm while they're, say, being as animalistic as that. Like it's either like this really intimate sexual connection and you're transmuting the energy and circulating it, and you're having all of those amazing like physical reactions, but to actually get to that point of being, I guess, the ravaging warrior and still having a full body orgasm, like bringing the two together. What
How?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Practice.
Yeah.
There's nothing else for it, you know. Like, how do I go to the gym and get a stronger back and at the same time improve my chest? You know, it's like, well, I got to train chest and back at the same time, and I got to repeat the fucking thing again and again and again until I do it. You know, it's like, I wish there was a secret pill, but it's not. It's literally just fucking practice and focus. And it doesn't matter what skill. It doesn't matter if it's you trying to have a full body orgasm while you're fucking living shit out of your girlfriend, or whether it's you trying to have a full body orgasm while you're having your finger sucked on by your partner. Like, it doesn't matter what, like, you can experience both if you bring attention and focus to those areas of your life and you practice. Can it be harder? Yes, because, you know, like, you are kind of trying not to come, trying to move your hips in a motion really quickly, pay attention to what she's doing, pulling her hair or choking her or scratching or whatever, like whatever shit is that she wants in this ravishing that you are providing for her, while trying to microcosmic orbit the shit out of your own sexual energy and keep you back in a position that stops you ejaculating. And, you know, like, it's a lot fucking going on, but it's practice. And the more you practice, the better you get. You know, like, train how you play. It's very simple. You want to be an Olympic athlete, you got to train every fucking day for 8 to 10 hours a day for your entire fucking adolescence, you know, because by the time you're 27, you're too old. Luckily, sex is not like that. You know, you can never too old. I know 65, 70-year-old men that fucking are still sex gods that can fuck all night, you know, and they're amazing at it. And they do the practices that I teach and that I do, you know. So yeah, it's practice. And you need to find a woman who, you know, this is not going off track, but like, when a woman's animal is fully active and when she starts to climax and come, your wombs as women, it starts to suck our seed, like, unconsciously. You may not even be aware of it. Yeah, you fucking know, don't you? It starts to suck it because it wants it. It wants to be impregnated. Like, the animal part of us wants to fuck, wants to get pregnant, wants to have a baby. And I want a seed and make you pregnant. I want to give you my seed because I'm a man and I want to spread my seed, and that's about my dominance on the planet. So it's, you know, there's also that part of when a woman's active and animal and she's like on it, like, it starts to draw out from the man. And so it's you know, it's not just a man's job. And like, another layer deeper, it's not my job to make you come, and it's not your job to make me come. Like, I know how to do that for myself, and I would hope that you know how to do that for yourself. And actually, the job or the task is for me to hold space for you to feel pleasure in your own body and listen to what is happening, to provide that in your body so that you can orgasm, and vice versa. We live in this duadic world of like, did you make her come? How many times did she come? Did you make, you know, like, it's like, I didn't do it for you. And if I'm not doing it for you, is that my fault or is it your fault? You need to tell me what your body likes. I don't fucking know. Like, everyone's different. So yes, luckily for men, it's a friction thing that, we trained for many, many fucking times that you just add a lot of friction. Eventually it happens. But, that's not how you give a man the best orgasm he's ever had. I can guarantee you. So, yeah, there's many layers in there. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm sure we could, the conversation could be endless. I guess one final piece before I get you to share some of the work and how people connect and all of that is, what's your main piece? I think I know what you're going to say anyway, but what's your main piece to keep sexual relationships thriving?
I put a meme photo up the other day, and it's like, I want the love and compassion and connection of a deeply conscious, loving relationship, and I want the sex of a toxic one. How to keep the passion alive? I mean, you've got to keep exploring. Like, you've got to keep the polarity alive, and eventually, when the polarity dies, like, don't get me wrong, if you explore too much too soon, you will burn it out. Like if you explore in 6 months, if you explore absolutely fucking everything you can possibly do, anal, threesomes, orgies, fucking dom, sub, this, that, outdoor, if you explore all of that in 6 months, it will be harder to maintain that passion sexually. And you probably won't do it in 6 months. But what I mean is, like, in 30 fucking years, if you really expect to be having the same sex you were in the first 6 months, you're not, it's not real. Like, let's be honest, like, we are creatures of habit, and those connections are few and far between, right? Now, if you want to maintain a healthy sexual connection 30 years into your relationship, you need to feel sexually active more frequently. Like, you need to be happy, healthy, vibrant in life for yourself. Like, you need to know, like, if you're depressed and sad and anxious, you're not going to be horny, right? If you've got all the mortgage up to the hill, working a job you hate, not doing anything fun, of course you're not going to want to have sex. And if you do have sex, it's purely to override the shit emotions that you're feeling, and it's not connected sex. So, like, if you want to have sparkful, passionate sex 30 years in, you need to have a sparkful, passionate life. Like, you need to be doing things that are fun and enjoyable, and you need to be constantly aroused in life. You need to know how to arouse yourself. Someone messaged me like, how do me and my partner get our horny times in sync? I was like, well, step one, if you're horny all the time, it won't matter when they're horny because you're horny. So that's step one, like, be horny all the time, like, be aroused all the time. Step two, understand what turns your partner on. Like if you know what turns them on, if you know their kinks and quirks and like, play to that. Like, you've got to put in the effort. It's that simple. You can't just expect it to happen like it did for the first 6 months. When you know that something turns them on, activate it, play with it, dance with it, So yeah, you're gonna have to remove any judgments you have around sexuality and lean into the fun and orgasmic.
Yeah, get turned on and orgasmic with life, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. What are some of the works that you've got coming up? Any workshops? Well, I mean, with life the way it is currently, I'm not sure if you have retreats going, and different programs that people can get in touch with you to work with you.
Thank you. Yeah. So Tyran Mowbray on all the social medias. Got a website's shit. I don't really use it, but it's there. But on November 1st, I have, next Monday, I've got my most affordable, cheapest program called Beast and Priest. And that's exploring this beast archetype that we have, this animal primal, and the priest, the devotional, giving, self-sacrificial aspect. So the light and the dark, more or less. So I'm teaching that with my brother, Paisley Hart. He's an artistic, gender fluid, beautiful man, and we've come together to create this. So we'll be teaching that live. It's an online program, but we'll be facilitating live in a private group. So that starts 27th. November 1st, I've got the Tantric Tradie, which is a 6-week program for men, teaching them all the sex tips and tricks around Tantra, sublimation, circulation, the power of manifestation and seeding rituals, how to master their self-pleasure, master their ejaculation, all the stuff in a really grounded, practical, simple way, so that they can become sex gods if they want, like they can master their sexual energy. Because when they've mastered that, they will actually show up for life more, they'll be happier, more vibrant, and they can go live their mission, whatever the fuck that is. And then on November 21st, I've got a program for women called Cultivate Your King. And it's just a 3-week program. It's a one-time offering. I probably won't run it again. But it's, women message me all the time about working with me and understanding their men better. So for 3 weeks, I'm going to teach women about men and masculinity. So the first week, we're going to focus on their sexuality. The second week, we're going to focus on their emotionality and their emotions. And the third week, we're going to focus on how to open their heart. So that's coming up November 21st. That's going to be a big group, private group on Facebook. They're all affordable. I've dropped all my prices and I've brought in bigger groups so that we can, make bigger impact, and obviously COVID and lockdown and everything. So yeah, that's what's coming up for the rest of the year.
And that's like so awesome for the guys. I love the priest, and what was I've just got like raging something. What
Beast and priest.
Beast and priest. Yeah, that's so going to be super insightful for the men that come and join that, to not be at war with themselves so much. And then for women, the amount of women that just don't understand the masculine energy and make their men wrong for some of the ways that they show up in life, and they don't realize. And it's just education and awareness that their responses and the way that they shut down or project cause the disconnect in their relationship when we're in relationship, all we want is union. So awesome work. Thank you for showing up in your purpose. Thank you for showing up for yourself and doing the work and being able to share that. You're a gift. And thanks for being on here tonight. I've really enjoyed our chat.
My pleasure, Danielle. Thanks for organizing this. I really appreciate you, trying to make an impact in men's lives, and having a bunch of men's coaches, facilitators on here. It's really great. And my pleasure. I'm glad I could support it.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. I am going to say goodnight, and I'm going to put all your links and things into this. This will be downloaded onto YouTube as well, and snippets on TikTok and stuff. So everyone will be able to see the awesome insight that you've had. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Good night, guys.